morning. Can you hear me okay? My name is Williams-Agee, and I'm the Director of Prevention and Education with the State Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. We are the coalition that represents all of the local domestic violence and sexual violence direct service agencies across the state. In my position as the Director of Prevention and Education, a lot of what I do is work with community educators in these programs. And they go into local schools, they go into local community organizations, and they work with young people. In schools, I think something that we haven't talked a lot about is the amount of dating violence and the amount of sexual violence that happens among this age group that we're talking about. In 2011, according to the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, 11.8% of students in South Carolina surveyed responded that they had been hit, slapped, or physically abused by a partner in the previous 6 months. 10.7% reported that they had been forced to have sexual intercourse against their will. The reality is that when we talk about these relationships that include violence, we have to also include the likelihood that there's reproductive coercion and sexual coercion involved in that as well. And what that means is that these young women specifically, is what I'm talking about, have a very difficult time protecting themselves against not only pregnancy, but STIs and HIV. The reality is that adolescent girls in physically abusive relationships are 3.5 times more likely to become pregnant than non-abused girls. We know that 1/4 of adolescent females reported their abusive male partners were trying to get them pregnant. What that looks like later in life, and the reality is that these abusive behaviors begin very, very early. Later in life, once that child exists, for example, that child is a part of both their lives as long as it exists and as long as they exist. And so the ability to control that person through the child is there, and it remains, and that is something we see a lot with adult survivors as well. What we know is that with comprehensive health education, it's very, very important that we include this ability for them to protect themselves and navigate reproductive coercion and protection.
Thank you.